your man, Louie T. Welcome to the 2020 NFL Draft Wrap-Up Series where your man Louie T aims to break down all 32 teams in the National Football League's 2020 NFL Draft using our brand new grading scale. From 5 to 1, each pick will be assessed a score. We'll take those scores, tally them up, divide by the number of picks, which will yield us an overall grade for that team's draft. We'll then move on to the next team in the series picked by you. That's right, you, the viewer out there, are in total control as this is the You Pick format. Simply be the first to leave a comment in the comment section of this and future videos in this series stating two things, the phrase next and the team you'd like to see next. Some examples would be Panthers, next, Carolina, next, Carr. You get where I'm going with this. As a matter of fact, the next team up in this series is none other than the Carolina Panthers. Brand new head coach, different direction this offseason under new head coach Matt Rhule, who has come in and pretty much turned over this entire franchise. Now, the ownership has given him the green light to do whatever it is he feels like he needs to do. They've paid him very handsomely to come in here and do what he's essentially done everywhere he's been to this point, and that's turn around the program and win. He did it at Temple. He did it at Baylor. Now he's asked to do it on the highest level, the National Football League level, with the Carolina Panthers. And he's made one thing abundantly clear by what he's done through this draft. And really in free agency as well. One, and I should say two things. One, he's going to get guys that he's familiar with, guys that he feels like can come in and help him turn this thing around by some of the free agents that he's brought in and also by some of the guys he went out and got in the draft. But more importantly, above all else, he's going to win with speed. All right? Speed! He's always talked about this, and I've listened to interviews that he had done when he was back at Baylor and talked about how he turned around that program, and he's got a philosophy, and many guys do, but his is a little unique because he uses analytics, he uses the different things to kind of help him identify what players fit best and what he actually wants to get done. And the common denominator for everything with him is speed and athleticism, and you saw that in this draft, and I think it kind of caught a lot of people off guard when he jumped in the fray this year with the Carolina Panthers and right away drafted 7 defensive football players. And so I think a lot of people thought, well, the Panthers could use some offensive line help and they could use this and they could use that. And they just went straight after the defense. And it makes a ton of sense when you look at the offseason the Panthers had. Obviously, the biggest name everyone's going to talk about is no more Cam Newton in Carolina. But let's face it, Cam Newton essentially didn't play in Carolina last year. So if you're a Panthers fan, you already were kind of used to it. I get it. Still a little sore subject for some Panthers fans because, again, he had been there for the last, 9 years or so in Carolina since 2011. So you totally get that. But when you look on the defensive side of the football, that's where a lot of the losses were. When you talk about Luke Kuechly as the centerpiece of that defense and the leader of that, not only defense, but team. You talk about Thomas Davis leaving a couple years ago, so he wasn't as fresh, but still, another loss there. But, you look at the defensive line, you lose some pieces up front, lose the edge rusher, you lose the defensive tackle there. You look at the safety in the cornerback positions, no more James Bradbury, no more Eric Reed, so you lose a couple of starters there. So there's a lot of work to be done on the defensive side of the football, and that's where he started to do some of his damage. Did some things in free agency, made a trade, traded away Trey Turner, and got a tackle in exchange for him and Russell Okung. We'll see how that works out for the Panthers. But above all else, this was a draft that kind of right away said speed, and more athleticism, more guys that we feel like have something to offer right away that we can mold. And that's what they took in this draft. 7 players in all. Let's take a look at what Matt Rhule did in his first draft as Panthers everything. As we take a look at this draft, and I'll be breaking down this Panthers draft with the write-ups. I got write-ups for every single player that they took in this draft. I'll be reading from these write-ups as we go through each and every single pick. And we start in the first round, 7th overall selection, defensive tackle out of Auburn. Derrick Brown is the selection. 6'5", 326 pounds, 34-inch arms. 12 tackles, 12 and a half tackles for loss, 4 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, 4 pass breakups in 2019 for his career. 33 and a half tackles for loss, 12 sacks, 4 forced fumbles, 6 pass breakups. So a guy that impacts the game in a multitude of ways. I had him as my number one defensive tackle on the board. He went as the number one defensive tackle off the board. So this was a no-brainer here. It was not a no-brainer in terms of the selection, though. And after looking at what the Panthers aimed to do in this draft, it's not surprising knowing how this team was so decimated on the defensive line. But at the same time, you having a chance to get your hands on a guy like Isaiah Simmons, with speed being one of the biggest keys to what they were looking to do in terms of upgrading the talent on this team, it had to be pretty enticing to take Isaiah Simmons. But I think it made it a lot easier not to take him when you see the guy that they took a mere 2 picks later in this draft. Not 2 picks, but 2 of their draft choices later. We'll talk about him when we get there. But I had a first round grade on him, top 10 grade on this guy. And normally in a regular draft where 2 quarterbacks don't go inside of the top 6 picks, you'd probably see a guy like Derrick Brown most likely than not go off the board in the top 5 picks. So size, length, strength are your first 3 strengths right off the bat. He's a big man. And when you see him, he looks the part, at 6'5", 326. Has the 34-inch arms. And again, a lot of times with these interior defenders, you're not getting long-limbed defenders. You're getting guys that have 32-inch arms, that kick inside. But here's a guy with 34-inch arms. And a lot of times when you go up against a guard, 34-inch arms are going to be longer than that guard that you're facing a lot of times, because what teams routinely do is they take a guy that didn't have the length and sometimes the athleticism to play outside as a tackle, kick him inside the guard. Well, those shorter arms are now up against a guy that usually has comparable arm length. Not in this case. Derrick Brown has 34-inch arms, and he knows how to use that length to his advantage as well. He's a strong individual. You see him, one of my favorite plays of his is against LSU, where he just literally takes the guard, dump trucks him into the lap of the quarterback, so much so that the guard knocks the quarterback down, Joe Burrow, and it's damn near a safety. So that kind of strength wins no matter where you are. College, high school, NFL, it wins, okay? Quickness. That's one of his biggest attributes, is the quickness. When you put the two together, the length, the strength, the speed, and the quickness, that's when you start to have a guy that has the makings of a troublemaker at the next level. He's got elite quickness, the kind that scares interior offensive linemen right off the snap. Latch and snatch, hump move. These are a couple of his tools that he likes to go to when he's looking to try to get to the quarterback or just disengage from an offensive lineman. And I told you, if you've been watching me for any amount of time, the latch and snatch is one of my favorite techniques that anyone can use along the defensive line, edge rusher, interior defensive line. I think it's underrated, especially when you have length. If you have length, the latch and snatch is one of your best friends. And I don't think a lot of people have acquainted themselves with the latch and snatch. But it's essentially a technique where you grab the offensive lineman in front of you. If you want to, this is optional. You don't have to, but shake them a little bit, and then pull them. All right. Because a lot of guys aren't expecting you to pull them. They're expecting you to try to, maybe slap their hands down, or if they've got you, try to bull rush them. What they're not expecting you to do is to pull. They're expecting you to push. And so a lot of offensive linemen aren't actually prepared to deal with the latch and snatch. And so a lot of times when you use it, it's a high hit rate. It works. And I love when guys use it. And he's got a very, very effective latch and snatch, because what that snatch essentially does is it not only takes that offensive lineman and gets him out of your way, but it also propels you towards your target, whether that's the ball carrier or it's the quarterback. It's giving you a head start. So I just don't know why more guys don't use it. Hump move, that's the old Reggie White. And you've got to have elite strength to do this. You can't just use this if you don't have extraordinary strength. Hump move is when you take your forearm essentially and you just club a guy. You know, some people call it the club. I call it the hump move because that's what everyone called it when Reggie White used to do it. And his was legendary. We all remember the visual of him in the Super Bowl versus the Patriots, taking the offensive tackle, giving him the hump move, throwing that guy about a gap over, and him getting to Drew Bledsoe and sacking him. He's got a nasty hump move, and that also helps him get to the quarterback, along with a rip move that's very, very effective. You know, so a lot of good things in the toolbox of a Derrick Brown that'll allow him to potentially be a difference maker, not just in the run game, but also as a pass defender. Can stand his ground versus double teams. He's a guy that can eat up some space and also able to stand his ground versus double teams when teams are looking to ride him up and get to the second level. He disrupts that. He's a guy that you don't just uproot out of a gap and open up a humongous hole for the back out of the backfield. He's a guy that two blockers are going to have to come with it if they're going to want to get him off the spot. Has versatility in an even or odd front. Looks like the Panthers are going to play an even front. So, and I think that's where he's suited best for. You know, I would have hated to have seen his talents wasted in a 3-4 defense where he's asked to just two gap. I want this guy to be able to be aggressive, one gap, get up the field, be a penetrator and a disruptor. That's what he does best. So I'm glad to see that that's what the Panthers have in mind for him. Can push or collapse the pocket. You know, it's not always about, you know, winning with quickness or some kind of elaborate move to get to the quarterback. Sometimes a good old-fashioned bull rush and collapse in the pocket works just as good as anything else for an interior defensive lineman. Quarterbacks hate interior pressure. They hate the pressure that's directly in their face. And the one thing quarterbacks want to be able to do is step up in the pocket. So if you get a big time defensive tackle that can collapse the pocket, it really makes quarterbacks uncomfortable. So to me, this is a big time guy to get here in the center of your defense. High motor and high character. You know, those are two things that sometimes people don't talk enough about, but you want guys that have a high motor, especially when you're talking about a damn near 330 pounder, to have a guy that just continuously and consistently is going at a high rate of speed, no matter where the play is, whether it's at him or away from him. You want a guy that's going to give you maximum effort. And also you want guys that are good dudes. You want guys that lead by example, that are going to be able to do it on and off the field and represent your organization in the right way. And Derrick Brown is one of those guys. And so you're getting a complete player here in Derrick Brown in the first round. As you look at his weaknesses, will need to develop more of a consistent rush plan to become a 3-down player. Right now, his pass rush plan is limited. I don't think he necessarily goes in thinking to himself, this is how I'm going to set a guy up. And I get that because you're not a pass rusher per se. You're more of a run-stuffing defensive tackle. But in this league, if you want to be an elite defensive lineman, you got to be able to get to the quarterback. And I'm always leery. I'm going to be very honest with you. And I have my doubts about Derrick Brown as well. I'm always leery about top 15 selected defensive tackles because if you haven't shown me the propensity to get to the quarterback on a consistent basis at the collegiate level where the offensive linemen aren't as good, I have a time just envisioning you just getting that much better to the point now where you're going to be a dominant force at the next level. It can happen. We've seen guys get better, and it does happen. But usually on the interior of the defensive line, when you are a dominant pass rusher, you show those traits at the collegiate level. He showed a little something, but it wasn't elite. You know, it wasn't the type of pass rushing threat that gets you nervous on 3rd and 8 on the interior. So I'm not quite sure he's going to come into the league and light it up like an Aaron Donald, you know, like a Fletcher Cox potentially. Those are the kind of guys where I look at and I say, okay, this is the kind of guy that could really wreck shop and really change a game. because they can do it on all 3 downs. Can Derrick Brown be that guy? Sure, he could. Is he that guy right now? I don't think he is in terms of getting to the quarterback, but we will see. Tries to gain leverage by going low, but oftentimes ends up on the ground. Low man wins in the trenches, and for a guy that's 6'5", surprisingly, he plays with outstanding leverage. And part of the reason why is because he plays so low to the ground, but in doing so, sometimes he makes himself an easy target to end up on the ground and not productive on that particular snap. Now, I've seen him do some extraordinary things from a really low base where he's damn near on the ground, and yet fighting from his knees, he's still able to stop a guard from pushing him anywhere and still able to get in on the tackle, which is just extraordinary how low this guy is at the time of some of these snaps. So, He does win the leverage battle on most snaps, but sometimes it comes at the expense of him ending up on the ground. I'd like to see him stay off the ground if at all possible. And then he needs to work on his technique and some of his moves a little bit more. Hand placement on his bull rush could be a little bit more consistent. Sometimes it's in the strike zone where you want it. Other times it's up near the neck, head area. You'd like to see that get a little bit tighter. You'd like to see him use his hands to defeat blocks a little bit better. I don't think he's a black belt at this current juncture. That's something that I probably would work on with him right away, is his hand usage, because that's the thing that could take his game to the next level right away. So there are just some little fundamental technique things that if I were coaching up Derrick Brown, that I would get on him about right away, and most of it stems from his hands. The hand usage is also something that not enough people understand, just how vital it is to use your hands at a high level to win on the offensive line, especially or the defensive line in the trenches. So I feel like hand usage is something he needs to get a little bit better at. But at the end of the day, you're getting an elite level prospect here. Has all the potential to not only be a first or second down disruptor, but also a difference maker in the passing game on third downs and obvious passing situations. So in the first round, 7th overall selection, defensive lineman out of Auburn. Derrick Brown for me is a 5. That's a no-brainer. This guy's a big-time talent, and I'm anxious to see how he plays for Matt Rhule in his career, especially early on as they try to turn things around in Carolina. My comp for him is Linval Joseph. As you know, Linval Joseph had some pretty good years going after the quarterback, but most of his damage was done as an elite, not a good, not an average, but an elite run-stuffing defensive tackle that can also play on the opposite side of the line of scrimmage. You go to your next selection in this draft, 2nd round, 38th overall pick, edge rusher out of Penn State. Yetur Gross-Matos is the selection. 6'5", 266 pounds, 35-inch arms, so more length, more athleticism, 15 tackles for loss, 9.5 sacks, no forced fumbles, no pass breakups in 2019. However, for his career, 37 tackles for loss, 19 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, no pass breakups for his career at Penn State. This is a guy I had a first-round grade on, was actually shocked that someone didn't pluck him at the very end of the first round. I didn't think he was going to be one of these guys that surprised us and went, top 15 or even top 20. But I said, somewhere in that 25 to 32 range, this guy's going to come off the board because there's just too much upside with Yetur Gross-Matos. I was wrong. He ended up lasting until the 2nd round. And honestly, I thought he would be one of those guys, if he didn't go in the late stages of the first, would go early second, meaning, first 5 picks or so. Well, it took him 6 picks to go in the 2nd round, which, again, was very surprising. So I think you got a steal here is what you ultimately got. He was my number 3 edge rusher in this draft, and he came off the board as essentially the 3rd edge rusher taken in this draft after, of course, Chase Young and LSU edge rusher K'Lavon Chaisson. So I just thought you would see another one go a little bit sooner, but he was the guy that they allowed to fall out of the first round, and it's to your benefit. Strengths, ridiculous length. Those 35-inch arms are exactly what the doctor ordered outside on the edge. It's a unique set of build to his body type, and it's rare that you get that kind of length on the outside from an edge rusher. So it's a different look for tackles that they don't see every day. So that's something that he needs to use to his advantage, and he does for the most part. NFL body that will only get bigger as he matures. You're talking about a young guy here that's 6'5", 266, and it wouldn't shock me if he got to 275 pounds and was just straight cut out of muscle. And if, once he continues to mature and grows into his body, they're going to get him in the strength and conditioning program in Carolina, and they're going to get him where he ultimately needs to be. He's going to be a force, man. This guy has something to him. Plays on the other side of the line of scrimmage, constantly in the backfield, whether he's knifing in or he's just destroying the blocker in front of him. You don't block him backside. He's got enough speed to get to the play and disrupt it. So he's a guy that is constantly in the backfield forcing the issue. Uses his length very well. I talked about this. Another guy that actually employs the latch and snatch technique, which with that kind of length, it's mandatory to me that you use the latch and snatch. He uses it very well, but also uses speed to power, the STP, where he converts his speed into power, gets the length going, gets into the pads of that offensive tackle and gets him on skates and drives him back into the quarterback. The guy that I comp him to, you see a lot of this from him as well. So I think that's a good sign if you're a Panthers fan that this guy has some of the traits of one of the better pass rushers in the NFL at this current moment. Good use of secondary counters. So if his initial rush doesn't win, let's say he goes with the speed rush off the edge, doesn't win initially, it stalls out. He's adept at secondary counter rushes. And one of the rushes that you'll see him use is a spin back to the inside. All of a sudden now that quarterback thinks he's stepping up into open space where he's going to be able to deliver the football. And next thing you know, gross-matos spins back inside, falls right back into that quarterback, hits him. And you never know what happens sometimes. Guys not expecting to get hit, ball's a little loose, that football could be jarred free. Sets a physical edge with outstanding stack and shed qualities. When you got 35-inch arms, I expect you to be able to not only stack offensive lineman or a tight end or a fullback, I expect you to shed that guy as well, because you've got the length to keep them at bay, keep them away from your body, keep them from getting to your chest and being able to lock you up. I expect you to be able to get them off of you and get to the ball carrier, and he does that at a high hit rate. Plays with a good motor and energy. One of those guys, again, another theme, and I think you'll see that throughout these picks, especially the ones early on, is that you're getting guys that play with the zest and the energy for the game. Not only long and athletically gifted guys, but also guys that give maximum effort, that hustle to the ball. And he's another one of those guys that gives you that production. He had big time production at Penn State, the 19 sacks, and really most of those coming over the last 2 seasons, 9.5 of them coming in 2019. This is a guy, 37 tackles for loss in his career. This is a guy that not only impacts the game from a sacks perspective, but also getting in the backfield and getting tackles for loss. Upside is just through the roof with this guy. And he's one of those guys that grows on you. You don't just watch him the first time and think, oh my God, dynamic edge rusher, look out, which is part of the reason why he's sitting here for you in the second round. He doesn't have that Von Miller or Justin Houston takeoff where the first couple of steps are lethal. That's not who he is. He's a guy that uses length and his ability to have athleticism and long strides to eat up grass to get to the quarterback. He's a guy that grows on you. The more you watch him, the more you respect what this guy ultimately can be at the next level. And I think that's where I was with him, is I had to keep watching to get the sense of, okay, this is what this guy provides at the next level. Weaknesses: not a twitchy rusher. Explosion won't be his calling card. And that's when you see some guys get pushed down the board. Same thing happened to A.J. Epineza, a productive, game-changing pass rusher in college football that got pushed down to the second round. Why? Because he's not a twitchy, explosive edge rusher. That's what a lot of teams and a lot of evaluators are looking for, the twitchy guy that can turn the edge, can bend and dip and rip. And that's not Yetur Gross-Matos. He's a different type of pass rusher, and he's not for everyone. But I love what he brings to the table, but he's not twitchy. He's not dynamic and explosive in that regard. And I think that's why he was sitting here in the second round for you to select. Has to find craftier ways to create pressure without real speed. Tempo, hands, spin, get off. So there's other ways where if you're not like, I think AJ Epineza gets it. He's not an explosive pass rusher by any stretch of the imagination. And so he had to develop other ways to get to the quarterback. And he's very crafty and he understands how to win and how to get to the quarterback. And Yetur Gross-Matos is going to have to get a little craftier. He's going to have to be a little bit, because if you watch him, a lot of his sacks are on second effort sacks, and they're on hustle sacks, and on the quarterback holding on to the football a little bit longer. There's a couple of times where he wins right away, but you want to see this guy be dominant, take his game to the next level. It's going to be with him understanding, all right, I'm not explosive, so how do I set guys up? Maybe I go with a little bit of tempo. Maybe I slow my rush down and then I speed it up, and I catch him off guard. Maybe I go outside the first 3 times I rush and all he's thinking is outside, outside, outside. Now I cross him over and I go inside with my length and my quickness. I get to the inside of that guy and now he's not ready for it. I'm going speed, speed, speed. Now I go speed to power, STP. And now he's looking for the speed up the field. Now I give him a little length and some bull rush with a little bit of force behind it, and all of a sudden he's on skates and I got him going into the lap of the quarterback. So just got to give them something to think about, and I think he will get better at that as time progresses. Plays too monotone, has to learn to switch tempo and be more aggressive. That's the one knock that I have on him right now that I think he has to alter, is that he doesn't have a change of pace. And I'm not telling him to turn it into fifth gear all the time. What I'm saying is, sometimes you got to go with a speed rush. Now, other times you got to go with a little, hesitation, a little hezzy. Then other times you slow off the line of scrimmage and then you speed up, or you're extra fast off the ball. As soon as they snap the ball, boom, you go. You got to switch up your tempo. Don't allow them to know what's coming. It's essentially like being a one-speed pitcher. If the guy at the plate knows it's coming straight and it's coming at right around 91 miles an hour, they're going to smoke it, all right? Like, these tackles are really, really good. And if you tell them every time, hey, this is what I'm coming with, and I'm coming at this rate of speed, they'll be able to pick up what you're doing and you won't hit home. So I'd like to see him play with a different tempo and kind of switch it up a bit. And I think there's a lot here to work with, though. It's not a finished product, nowhere near it. But there's a lot to work with here. And honestly, I believe you got yourself a first-round talent in the second round. My comp for him is Chandler Jones. Right now he's the most dominant edge rusher in the game. Chandler Jones had the most sacks in the league last season. He's been up there just about every year of his career. It's amazing what he's done, and nobody's talking about him because he's out in Arizona right now. But Chandler Jones is dominant, and I see a lot of the same principles. You could even throw a JPP out there. That kind of length that you get with those two defenders, and that kind of ability. Yetur Gross-Matos has a little bit of both of those guys in him. So in the second round, 38th overall selection, edge rusher out of Penn State, Yetur Gross-Matos for me is a 5, as the Panthers get themselves a pretty good bargain here in the second round as we move to the third round with this Panthers draft. The second round, 64th pick overall, defensive back out of Southern Illinois, Jeremy Chin is the pick. 6'3", 221 pounds, 32-inch arms, ran a 4.45 40, 2.5 tackles for loss, 1 sack, no forced fumbles, 7 pass breakups, 4 interceptions in 10 games in 2019 for his career. 5.5 tackles for loss, 1 sack, 6 forced fumbles, 31 pass breakups, 13 INTs, 1 block kick in 38 games. I had a second round grade on him. He goes in the second round. He's a really intriguing prospect for a number of different reasons. And this is the reason that you feel comfortable pulling the trigger on Derrick Brown at number 7 and not taking Isaiah Simmons, because you're getting what a lot of people have dubbed Isaiah Simmons light, or great value Isaiah Simmons. Whatever the case may be, you're getting a guy with a similar skill set, similar body type. No, he's not 240 pounds. No, he's not running a 4.38, but he's the next best thing. Again, that's why he's Isaiah Simmons light. Similar, height and length, similar athleticism. And so, you bypass one guy in exchange for a alternate route, but you feel like you came away with a better overall package because you weren't going to find a guy with the talent of a Derrick Brown at 64. So you had to pick and choose which one you wanted to go with. I think you made the right decision when it's ultimately said and done. I had a second round grade on him, and he goes literally back end of the second round. So strengths, height, weight, speed specimen. I mean, when you look at him, this guy is cut from a different cloth. He looks the part of a guy that can just, wreck shop at the next level. He's, to me, one of the more unique players in this draft in terms of how his body is built. 6'3", 221, running a 4.45 is ridiculous, is what it is. And so you're getting an elite athlete here in Jeremy Chinn. Ridiculous closing burst. One of my favorite things about this guy is his ability to close the distance between he and whomever has the football. I'd actually like to see him blitz more. Those were my favorite plays on tape. That and him making plays on the football. But the most impressive things I saw from him was him, blitzing the quarterback from about 20 yards away and that quarterback not even having a shot. This guy timing it up perfectly and getting in the quarterback's face in about a second and a half from a 20-yard distance. Ridiculous closing burst. I mean, it's just stupid. Versatility. They played him everywhere, as you would imagine. This guy was the best player on the field every time he stepped on the field. This guy playing in the Missouri Valley Conference was the best football player every time he stepped on the field. And so they put him everywhere to try to, take advantage of his unique set of skills. Put him as a split safety, put him in the box, put him in the slot. They used him as a blitzer. Like I said, I wanted to see him blitz a little bit more and even closer to the line of scrimmage, but they used him in a multitude of ways, and I can't imagine the Panthers not taking advantage of all of these different traits and skills that this guy possesses. Reliable tackler. I thought he was going to be a little bit more of an enforcer, a little bit more physical of a tackler when you see his frame, but he's not. And that's okay. Isaiah Simmons is not a really physical tackler in his own right. He's more of a just get you down on the ground type of guy, and that's okay. Ball hawking playmaker. That's probably the thing that most people love about Jeremy Chinn at this very moment is his ability to drop over the slot and play it like a cornerback. I mean, his playmaking skills, his ball hawking ability. The man had 13 picks, and this is a consistent 13. There wasn't one season where he went off for 7 picks and another where he had 4, and then the other 2 he had 1. Like, this is a consistent 3-3-3-4 type of setup here, where he just every year you could count on him for 3 to 4 picks a season. So this is a consistent thing over time. So, the ball skills are there. The playmaking ability is there. 31 pass breakups means he's getting his hands consistently on the football. The 6 forced fumbles also alludes to the fact that this guy is around the ball and making plays. So this is a guy that can do a lot of things, and not many guys can do it in the frame and the package that he brings to the table. High energy, high motor athlete. I talked about that with the first 2 guys you drafted. I'm talking about it again here. You're talking about another elite level athlete for his respective position. Same thing you've done with the first 2 players taken in this draft. You're doing it yet again here. More speed, more athleticism, more high motor. You're getting that here with Jeremy Chinn. You look at his weaknesses. I think he takes poor pursuit angles. And what I've noticed with guys with extreme athleticism and speed is that they take poor angles and they're able to make up for it with the amount of speed that they have. They're able to erase some of the mistakes they make by taking poor angles. That's not something I want a guy to continuously do and think he's going to always get away with it, because at this level, you're not playing against North Dakota State anymore. You're not playing against Youngstown State, all right? Now you're playing against elite level athletes that run just as fast as you do. That guy that you were chasing, that running back, isn't running a 4.57 anymore. Now he's running a 4.4. Now he's running a 4.39. You better take a proper pursuit angle or they will outrun you and you will not catch up to them. So think he needs to take better pursuit angles. I think his pursuit angles can be a little bit rough around the edges. Not as aggressive as his skill set suggests he should be. I think his instincts are a little bit behind right now. I don't know if he necessarily trusts what he sees right away. And I think, with some coaching and some film study and him just being a little bit more comfortable, I think he plays a little bit more aggressively. But right now, I think he's a lot more comfortable in the passing game as a pass defender than he is as a run defender, coming up and getting into his proper fits and, coming up and attacking the line of scrimmage. He's a little bit more passive than I thought he was. I was looking for a guy that was going to be flying all around. I don't know if you remember this guy, Miles Killebrew, who came out of a small school about 4 or 5 years ago, drafted by the Lions in like the second or third round. And he was just flying all over the field. Big, similar size right there and speed to Jeremy Chin, big physical safety, smashing everybody. And his tape was one of those, oh, okay, type tapes where he was just smashing everybody. You're like, whoa, this guy's a hitter. I thought I was going to get a little bit of that from Jeremy Chin. Not exactly, and that's okay. But I just want to see him play faster. He's so fast that I want to see him play a little bit faster. I think he plays, under control, but to a fault sometimes. He's too patient. He's too under control. I like to see him allow his athleticism to just take over sometimes. But again, you have to trust what you see in order to do that. You have to know what's going on. And sometimes I'm not quite sure if he does. And so I think that will get better over time as well. And then, of course, the level of competition discussion. I don't really like to always harp on that, but it is a thing. I mean, he did play in the Missouri Valley Conference. He did play against lesser competition. And like some of the things I talked about him getting away with, you're not going to be able to get away with it at the next level. You take poor angles at this level, and you play now in the NFC South. You take a wrong angle on Julio Jones. Julio! That's a touchdown. You're not going to take a poor angle on Julio Jones and then catch him from behind. And so it's those types of things that he's going to have to be better at, or else he's going to pay. But my comp for him is Adrian Wilson. I don't know if you remember him. Longtime Arizona Cardinal safety that was a big guy, could play in the box, a ton of ball production, was a very versatile safety, one of the better safeties for the life of his career in the league. And so I see a lot of those same kinds of traits, same size, same demeanor. I see a lot of that in him. And so that's my comp. In the second round, 64th overall selection, safety out of Southern Illinois. Jeremy Chin for me is a 4 for the Carolina Panthers. As we get to the next selection in this draft for the Panthers, no third round pick for the Panthers, but they do make a selection here in the fourth round, 113th pick overall. Cornerback out of Notre Dame, Troy Pride Jr. is the selection. 5'11", $193, ran a 4.4 flat. So again, more speed for new Carolina Panthers head coach Matt Rhule. And you see the theme here, okay? I talked about it at the top of this breakdown, but the theme is athleticism, speed, and guys that can come in and be moldable. And here's a guy that really needs to be molded. I'm a Notre Dame Fighting Irish fan, so I watched this guy play for the last 2 years, and that's where he really got an opportunity to start and be a fixture in the lineup. And I've got a lot of interesting things to say about Troy Pride Jr. For his 2019 campaign, no tackles for loss, no sacks, no forced fumbles. We'll get to that a little bit later on. 6 pass breakups, 1 INT in 13 games. For his career, 2.5 tackles for loss, no sacks, 1 forced fumble, 18 pass breakups, 4 interceptions in 45 games. I had a 5th round grade on him. So to me, this was a little bit early for him off the board. And I thought there were other players that to me were much better football players, way better football players that you could have taken here in the 4th round. So I have an issue with that. But, and just to throw out a few names, Josiah Scott, all right, Amik Robertson. And I get those are undersized corners. And maybe you're looking for a bigger guy to play outside. I get it. Those not everybody's cup of tea. Much better football players, though. All right. John Reed out of Penn State, to me, much better football player. All right, I would have taken John Reed over Troy Pride Jr. in a heartbeat. All right, you're looking for a long corner that can run. Reggie Robinson II out of Tulsa was here on the board at the time. 6'1", 6'2", 200-pound corner that runs a 4.44. So if you were looking for length and speed, there was a guy there. Maybe he's not your cup of tea. I get it. But I just thought there were other players on the board available at the time of this selection that I thought were better and would have given you better value than Troy Pride Jr. But that being said, strengths, high-level athlete with speed to match. We've said this already with the first three selections. High-level athlete, speed, just a ton of athleticism that's moldable, and that's what you're getting here in Troy Pride Jr. Free-flowing fluidity and movement skills. At the cornerback position, more so than any other position on the field defensively, you want, maybe linebacker is equal to that of cornerback. You want guys that are free-flowing, that have fluidity on the football field. They don't struggle to transition, flip their hips. They don't have tight hips. They don't have tight ankles. You know, you want guys that just out there look like they belong. They look like they can get anywhere on the field seamlessly. And that's what Troy Pride Jr. looks like. He just doesn't have any issues transitioning. His back pedal is clean. His transitions look good. Everything that you could ask for, he has that in terms of movement skills. Plant and drive capabilities. This is a guy that can stick his foot in the ground and come back to the football and make plays on the football. His plant and drive capabilities are off the charts. And so it's these types of traits that I know that Matt Rhule looked at and said, I can work with this guy. He may not be a finished product right now, but he's got everything that we need. We just need to get our hands on him. And I understand that. You know, when you watch him, there's some good things here, but there are also some things that I can't deal with, you know, and we'll talk about those. From off coverage, press and bail, you know, so when he's in off coverage, cover three, or he's in press and bail, starts at the line of scrimmage and then bails, he reacts extremely well to what he sees. That's when he's at his best to me. When he presses and bails and he's keying quarterback's eyes, I think that's when he's at his best. When he can see what's going on in front of him, he's keeping the action in front of him. That's when he's able to do his most damage, if you ask me. Special teams value. Look, he didn't return any kicks necessarily at Notre Dame, but this guy was a very prolific return man in high school. So there is something to that. And he was an ex-wide receiver in high school. We'll talk about that here in a second. But so this is a guy with some return ability in a pinch. If you need someone to go back there and field punts and kickoffs, Troy Pride Jr. can definitely do that if need be. So I think he offers you a little bit of special teams value as well. Weaknesses. The first thing that jumped off the screen at me and has throughout his Notre Dame Fighting Irish career is that he lacks LLC properties. And, you know, for me, if you've watched me, you know that that's my biggest pet peeve of a cornerback. If you don't have LLC properties, I got problems. I can't live with corners who don't look, locate, and contest. All right. So look is the first, to me, the first fundamental building block of any cornerback trying to make plays on the football. You got to look back. All right. You got to find the football. So you look back first and foremost. Then the next L is locate. So you look back. Now you got to find the ball. It's one thing to look back and look up. Now you got to find where the damn ball is. All right. And then after you find the football, so you look, now you locate it. Now you got to contest. Now you go up and make a play on the football, whether you're knocking it down or you're trying to pick it off. But you can't pick off what you don't see. And this guy does not, I repeat, does not look back for the football. When he's in man-to-man coverage, when he's in phase, he doesn't look back for the football. 9 times out of 10, he's going to face guard or he's going to panic. I can't live with that as a defensive coordinator and as a defensive backs coach. You've got to find the football. He doesn't, okay? That's problematic for me. Number 2, wide receiver background shows and run support. This guy wants no parts of the run game whatsoever. He does not want to tackle. If he has to, he will, but only on a have-to-tackle basis will he get involved. If he can, he wants to be a spectator. He'd like to sit back. Hey, y'all got it? You sure y'all got it? All right, cool. Y'all go ahead and handle that. They might be like, hey, man, Troy, we need you. Hey, y'all look like y'all got it, man. Like he doesn't want it. He's got to be the last resort in order for him to get involved. Again, I just can't stomach that as a defensive backs coach. If this is a guy that I'm going to be playing out on the perimeter, he's going to have to be a more a bigger fixture in the run game. Right now, he adds no value to your run support, your run stopping defense, and could be a penalty machine at the next level because he doesn't look back for the football. I thought there were times at Notre Dame that we got away on a 3rd and 15 where a quarterback just throws it up on Troy Pride Jr.'s side. And I said, oh, that's a penalty. And we got away with it somehow, some way. This is a guy that face guards. He does not look back for the ball. And he's in the position to, play back shoulder fades because he's always facing the receiver. But he doesn't actually know where the ball is, so it's hard to react. And so I'm not in love with Troy Pride Jr. I don't love this selection. And keep in mind, when the scores of these picks, it's not always a true representation of just the player. It's also, these scores are a confluence of the player that you're getting, the value that you're getting at this pick, which I don't think this was good value, what this player is at this moment, the needs that were met at this pick, all of those things are taken into consideration, not just the player. And so cornerback is definitely a need. I thought there were better corners on the board. That being said, here in the 4th round, 113th pick overall, Troy Pride Jr. for me is a 2, man. I'm not in love with this selection, especially with some of the guys that were on the board at the time. Greg Stroman is my comp for him, the former Virginia Tech Hokie corner drafted by the Washington Redskins. Minus the special teams value, even though I think Troy Pride could offer you some. Greg Stroman was a punt returner coming out of Virginia Tech. Troy Pride Jr. not as much coming out of Notre Dame at this very moment. So, as you can tell, very lukewarm on this selection. Thought there were better options available at the time of this pick. We'll see what happens with Troy Pride Jr. He can run. He's got some athleticism, which is what Matt Rhule is looking for. We'll see if he's able to get this guy. Coaching going to be imperative with the Troy Pride Jr. 5th round, 152nd pick overall. Defensive back out of West Virginia by way of the St. Louis Battlehawks, played in the XFL. Kenny Robinson is the selection. 6'2", 203-pound defensive back. Doesn't have a 40 on record. I put him down as a 4.48 to 4.56 40 guy. I think he's closer to the 4.56 than he is the 4.48. But for a safety, that's pretty good speed either way. He can definitely run. You can see that on tape. He's very athletic. And he's got tremendous ball skills. That's the thing that stands out above all else with Kenny Robinson. In his final year at West Virginia, 2 tackles for loss, no sacks, 1 forced fumble, 4 pass breakups, 4 INTs in 12 games. For his career at West Virginia, 4 tackles for loss, no sacks, 1 forced fumble, 7 pass breakups, 7 INTs, 2 pick sixes in 25 games. All right, and then in the XFL in 5 games, he had a tackle for loss, 1 sack, no forced fumbles, and 2 INTs. So in a 3-year span, the man had 9 interceptions. So again, you see what we're doing here. Another athletically gifted playmaker that's always around the ball with a nose for the football. I had an early day 3 draftable grade on him. 4th round, 5th round, anywhere in there, I thought was a solid time for him to come off the board. You take him in the 5th round, so I thought you got good value there. His strengths, solid length and frame that may be able to add more mass. When you look at his frame, he looks like he's going to ultimately end up being a 210, 215-pound safety, and he's got some really good length and athleticism. There's an interception against Oklahoma that I'm going to probably reference, multiple times. As a matter of fact, ridiculous ball skills and production to match, and he's a gifted athlete. Those are the next 2 strengths, and I just want to couple those together because the reason he's got ridiculous ball skills is because he's a gifted athlete. There's a pick against Oklahoma in the end zone against Kyler Murray. And remember, we're not talking 2019 versus Jalen Hurts. We're talking 2018. That's when you got to go back to his game versus Oklahoma and his time at West Virginia. He picks off Kyler Murray in the end zone. And remember, that was a shootout, that game was. You're talking 59 to 56, I think the final score of that game ended up being. Oklahoma victory. And it was a back and forth. It was a track meet, as you could expect. There were turnovers in the game by both teams. And one of the biggest plays in that game at the time was Kenny Robinson's pick of Kyler Murray in the end zone. A beautiful play where he reads the eyes of Kyler Murray, sees where he's going with the football, gets there, but then gets up. And I'm talking about levitation, Holmes. All right. I mean, gets off the ground and goes and gets the football. I mean, at its highest peak, at the apex of that football being in the air, he goes up and with natural hands, soft, drugstore cotton hands, snatch that football out of the air. It's gorgeous. It's the kind of play that you come to expect from a guy like Kenny Robinson. Then he has a ridiculous pick in his XFL pick that he had against the DC Defenders, where he goes and digs it out of the ground. I mean, literally, that ball is 6 inches from touching dirt and grass. And it doesn't touch a blade of grass because he gets his hands under that football and caresses it ever so softly and brings it in. And it's that kind of ball skills that get you excited about Kenny Robinson at the next level. Unafraid of coming downhill and being physical. He'll throw his body weight around. You know, he's one of these guys that wants to be involved, unlike a Troy Pride Jr. who wants nothing to do with physicality and getting his hands dirty in the run game. This guy is more than willing to throw his helmet in the hat in the ring and help out in run responsibilities and duties. So this is a guy not afraid to be physical at the point of catch or on a ball carrier as a coming downhill safety. Can be disruptive at the point of catch. He's a guy that usually on arrival is looking to be physical, whether it's in a capacity to dislodge the football from a hit, or if it's raking at the arms and trying to get the football out that way, or if it's making a play on the football. He's just looking to be disruptive at the point of catch. And generally, he is disruptive at the point of catch. You get to his weaknesses. Easily distracted by perceived playmaking opportunities. I thought he had, even though he had an interception in that Oklahoma game in 2018, I thought he had a rough night. You know, took some poor pursuit angles. Eye discipline was all over the place, got beat for a touchdown. He was supposed to be helping out his corner. He comes up on a shallow route. Eye discipline all over the place. And he bites up. They fed him some eye candy and he bit it. You know, they gave him the old obligatory, hey, look at this. And he's like, ooh, ooh. And all the while, Hollywood Brown is running 40 yards behind him for a score. And his corner's got to be looking back like, bro, where were you? What are you doing? You know, so he's easily distracted by opportunities that he perceives to be playmaking opportunities. Oh, man, I can make a pick here instead of just doing his job. You know, sometimes, you know, there's opportunities to make plays, and then there's times where you just need to do your damn job. And that was, you know, and sometimes he can get lost in the sauce, fall asleep behind the wheel. And a lot of times when you're a safety, when you make a mistake, it's not a 25-yard mistake. Usually it's a 55-yard touchdown mistake. They're amplified at the back end. So he's got to be a little bit better than that. Not a reliable last line of defense defender. Again, I talked about some poor angles, you know, getting the ball carriers. And then there's some missed tackles. I talked about him coming down aggressively. You know, there's this happy medium, this fine line you got to walk. I talked about Jeremy Chin not being aggressive enough, but he's a really good last line of defense because he's not going to allow guys past him. And then there's Kenny Robinson that comes down a little bit recklessly and isn't a great last line of defense because he will miss a tackle. There's kind of got to be this happy medium. There's this place in between Jeremy Chin and Kenny Robinson that you'd like them to meet, where you're playing with a controlled aggression, you know, and he's got to figure that out because right now he's a little OC and he's missing tackles because of it. And then finally, not as fluid in man-to-man situations, you know, unlike Jeremy Chin, who is comfortable, like he's in his element when you tell him, hey, man, need you to drop over the slot and cover this tight end or this wide receiver. He's like, cool, I got you. Kenny Robinson's like, you sure you want me to do that? I mean, I can if you need me to, but I'm asking you, are you sure you want me to do that? And I'm like, Kenny, nah, you probably right. Really don't want you to do that. He's like, because I can do it. He's like, nah, Kenny, I'm good. Don't worry about it. Don't worry. Thanks, though, man. I appreciate it. So not really a guy you want in man-to-man. He can do it in a pinch, but I wouldn't advise that if I were you. So remember, this is a guy ended up in the XFL. Why? Because he was dismissed from West Virginia for academic fraud. Okay, so he had an option to throw his name back in the transfer portal to end up somewhere else, and there were a lot of teams ready to snatch this guy up. Among them, Alabama. Right? Some big time programs that wanted this guy, and he had a decision to make. Do I sit out an entire year? Because in the NCAA guidelines, it states that if you're going to play right away after transferring, you have to be in good academic standing with the last institution you left. Well, obviously, he wasn't. So he's going to have to sit out an entire year. He wasn't willing to do it. He saw an opportunity and an alternate route that he could take where he could also get paid. And it benefited him as he was the first player from the XFL to get drafted in the NFL draft. In the 5th round, 152nd pick overall, safety out of West Virginia by way of the St. Louis Battlehawks. Kenny Robinson for me is a 3. I think this guy's got some talent. He definitely got some ball skills, got some athleticism, a lot of workable tools here. My comp for him is Glover Quinn Jr., the longtime NFL safety that played with the Texans, played with the Lions. And so ball hawking, playmaking safety that will come up and hit you. So a lot of the similar traits, similar size. I see it in him here in the 5th round. As we go to the 6th round, 184th pick overall, defensive lineman out of Baylor, Bravion Roy is the pick. 6'1", 332 pounds, ran a 4.9 40. So you're talking about a really, really tremendous athlete here. And this is a guy that Matt Rhule is all too familiar with, which is why you make the pick here. This is a player out of Baylor that he coached for the life of his career at Baylor. A guy that he knows what he's capable of, knows his work ethic, knows how this guy is able to perform, and knows his upside. And so you take a guy that you're very comfortable and familiar with here in the 6th round. And so 13 tackles for loss, 5.5 sacks, 1 forced fumble, 1 block kick in 14 games for the Baylor Bears. For his career, 19 tackles for loss, 7.5 sacks, 1 forced fumble, 2 block kicks in 48 games. And so what I just essentially described to you is a guy that's trending upwards. His best football was played in his final year at Baylor, so he's trending in the right direction. And that's part of the reason you take a late round flyer on this guy. I had a late day 3 grade on him. 6th, 7th round, anywhere in there was a good time for him to come off the board. You take him in the 6th round. So to me, that's really good value here. Big body, low center of gravity defender is the first strength. 332 pounds. There's no way you get around that. Okay. He's a big man. Okay. But then at the same time, he's not 6'5" like the dominant defender you took in the 1st round in Brown. He's 6'1", so it's a different type of football player here. You know, different type of body type and a different, center of gravity. And so this is a guy that can win the leverage battle just off of his size. He's already low to the ground as it is. He's consistently winning the leverage battle, and I kind of just spoke to that this is a guy that consistently wins it because he's already down there. He's 6'1". He's not 6'5". So he's usually shorter than the guy that's blocking him, and so he's already got the advantage of being able to get up under that guy's pads and win the leverage battle. Quickness off the snap. I wasn't expecting a 335-pound, essentially ninja, but that's what I got here in Bravion Roy. This guy can move, man. Really quick off the snap. He wins immediately, and he's a problem off the snap with his quickness. Plus strength to push and collapse the pocket. Another one of these guys similar to Derrick Brown that, can just collapse the pocket and make life hell for you in an obvious passing situation. You don't necessarily have to take Bravion Roy off the field as a guy that can't get to the quarterback. He can do some things on 3rd down. So another guy that I feel like you throw in the mix along that defensive line. You already got K'Wan Short. Now you got a nice little rotation here with Bravion Roy after losing Gerald McCoy and company this offseason. You throw this guy in the mix. You also lost another defensive tackle. So you needed to replenish the defensive line, and you were able to do that here with another guy that can collapse the pocket and get after the quarterback in Bravion Roy. Nice latch and snatch and a secondary spin move. So another guy that understands the utilization of the latch and snatch, even though he doesn't have the longer arms like a Yetur Gross-Matos or a Derrick Brown, still understands that the latch and snatch is the way to go. And he uses it very effectively, along with a secondary spin. He tries to use quickness off the snap. It doesn't work. Then he spins back inside. And you'd be surprised at how well a guy his size using that secondary spin is able to disrupt a play. So his secondary spin move is pretty damn impressive for a guy 332 pounds. Can get skinny and knife into the backfield. I almost feel dirty for saying getting skinny at 332 pounds, but that's exactly what he does, man. There are plays, you watch him in that Oklahoma Big 12 championship game. There's a play late in that ball game on a run play where he gets skinny, knifes into the backfield, and tackles the running back for about a 3-yard loss. Like, that's big time, playmaking stuff right there. You know what I mean? That's big boy football. And that's a 330-pounder getting skinny. Doesn't happen very often, but he's able to do it. Stout at the point of attack with the ability to shell and corral ball carriers. Another one of these guys not content with just sitting in front of a blocker. He wants to disengage. He wants to throw that blocker aside and get to the ball carrier. And this is another one of these guys that plays with energy. While he's on the field, he's playing like a madman, and that's what you're looking for in your defenders, and that's what Matt Rhule is looking for. All these guys play with energy. All these guys play with a zest for the game, and all these guys have athletic tools and traits to work with. You look at his weaknesses. Once linemen get into his chest, he struggles to regenerate power. Look, he's got shorter arms, and so when linemen get into his chest, he's got to re-rev the engine, and sometimes he's not able to do it. So that's something I don't know you're going to be able to really get around that because he's a shorter armed defender. And you get a guy with 34-inch arms at the guard position that may be able to keep him at bay. It may be tough for him to be able to get into the chest of that offensive lineman. That's where he's got to use his quickness to win. Lack of length doesn't aid him in his pursuit to disengage. Usually when he can't get free of an offensive lineman, it's because of the length factor. The guy blocking him is able to get their hands on him and get that firm grip on his pads and doesn't let him go. And so, that's where the lack of length for him to be able to keep a guy at bay and disengage comes into play. Despite his size, he doesn't stand up to aggressive double teams. There are a couple of times on tape where you watch him absolutely uprooted with a double team. Once he gets going and someone's able to get him moving, he finds it a little tough to stick his heels on the ground and say, all right, like offensive linemen, you may win the rep early, by, getting them off balance a little bit, and they might be on skates, but, the good ones are able to dig their heels in, sit down and say, all right, that's enough. You're not moving me any further. He can't stop. Once he gets rolling downhill and you get him moving, you can uproot him a gap and a half out of the play, and I watched that happen to him a couple of times on tape. So, unlike Derrick Brown, who you're just not moving this guy, even with an aggressive double team, you're not going to move this guy a gap and a half out of the way. You can move Brevion Roy if you get the right kind of double team going. He did have a dislocated elbow in 2016, cut his season to just 9 games. That's on the Carfax report. Nothing to be alarmed about. Has played pretty much every game moving forward since then. But in the 6th round, 184th pick overall, defensive lineman out of Baylor. Brevion Roy for me is a 3. Really good football player. See a lot of potential out of him. I actually see a guy that can even affect the game from a passing standpoint when on the field. And he's got quickness. He's got some traits. He reminds me of B.J. Raji. That's my comp for him. A guy that made some plays in the league. And I see similar body type, similar ability. I see a lot of B.J. Raji. He's a lot more athletic than B.J. Raji ever was. But we'll see what happens with Brevion Roy. As we wrap up this Panthers draft here in the 7th round, 221st pick overall, cornerback out of Florida International, Stanley Thomas Oliver III is the selection. 6 feet, 192 pounds, 4'4", 840. So another guy with speed that can run. 4 tackles for loss, 2 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, 8 pass breakups, 1 INT in 13 games in 2019 for his career. 7 tackles for loss, 2 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, 18 pass breakups, 2 INTs, and in 26 games. I had a late round grade on him, 6th, 7th round, anywhere in there. I was fine with him coming off the board. These are the kind of guys you want to take in the 7th round, to be honest with you, because, with my philosophy, 7th round, you're looking for a guy that doesn't matter about need or anything like that, even though the Panthers could definitely use more cornerback help. Doesn't really care. I don't really care about my positional need at that point in the 7th round. I'm looking for a guy that satisfies one of 3 things. First of all, above all else, you got to be talented. All right. I got to see something in you that makes me think you can make my roster. That's number 1. Number 2, this is the time where you take a guy with, some kind of red flag, whether it's not enough experience, character issues, or injury concerns. All right. There's some kind of red flag here, but also there's tremendous upside that if I can get past that red flag, there's something here to be gained. That's what you're getting here in Stanley Oliver, is you're getting a cornerback with not a ton of experience. He's making the conversion over from wide receiver, and so he's raw, extremely raw. But in him, you see a lot of workable traits, things that you feel like if we're able to mold him correctly, we could have ourselves a starting caliber corner here. And so there's a lot here to work with. Good athleticism and length. He looks longer than what he probably is on tape. He looks really long, and really good athleticism. You can see that this guy can move on the football field. And like I said, the cornerback and linebacker positions are the 2 positions on the defensive side of the football where you're like, I really want guys that are comfortable out in space, that don't look tight and constricted and look uncomfortable when you ask them to move around in space, because those guys are going to be out in space, and the safeties too, more so than anybody else on the defensive side of the football. You need those guys to be comfortable moving around, and he's definitely that. Ex-wideout that uses his former position to help him with his new one. This is a guy that you can tell played wide receiver because he understands route concepts, route recognition. He understands what these receivers are trying to do because he once himself was a wide receiver. And he also has some ball skills, that I think is going to aid him at the next level. Those hands that he used at the receiver position, and maybe they weren't all that good. Maybe that's why he made the transition. Who's to say? I can just tell that this guy has a wide receiver background, and it does aid him as a cornerback. He's willing to tackle. Unlike Troy Pride Jr., who you took in the 4th round, he's willing to tackle. He's not afraid of having to get a guy down. He's not afraid to come up and help and run support. So you got a willing tackler here. He's a fluid mover. He can plant and drive and come back and attack the football. You want guys that aren't allowing free meals underneath. You want guys that force you to pay for everything. And that includes the 7-yard out route. That includes the 12 back to 10. That includes the speed cut. That includes the 8-yard stop route. You want guys that challenge everything underneath. No free meals, nothing easy. You want free food? Go somewhere else. You can't have it here. So he's a guy that can plant and drive on the football, come back and make a play. That's why he got 18 pass breakups. And then LLC properties, he actually does look back for the football. So there is look, locate, and contest properties here. Again, got to get it out of him, but it is available. Weaknesses, he's extremely raw. Just a lack of experience. And you can tell he doesn't trust his eyes a lot of times. He wants to make sure that this is actually happening before he reacts to it. And you know what? Better safe than sorry out there on an island at the cornerback position. I'd much rather make sure that you're catching the football than to react to something and then it's a double move and I got. Now it's a 67-yard touchdown over the top. So, as you get more experience, as you watch more film, as you become more comfortable, you'll start to pick up on splits and, okay, this has got to be an outbreaking route because of this tight split that he has towards the inside. He's probably setting up himself for some room so he can work to the outside. Like you start to pick up on little nuances. Oh, when he does this shoulder hitch, that usually means he's running an in-breaking route. Like these are the types of things you pick up with more experience. He just doesn't have that right now. Needs to get off of blocks better. He's a $192. So if he gets a physical receiver out on the edges that lays hands on him, there are times where he just can't get off of that block. can do a better job of mirroring receivers from press. To me, he's better in press and bail right now than he is in just pure man-to-man coverage. But when he's in press, he doesn't mirror all that well right now. A guy can give him a nice, crafty release and leave Stanley Thomas Oliver the third behind. And now he's in trail technique, and now he's trying to fight to get back into the play. So, when you don't do your work early as a cornerback, you put yourself in a bad position later. Do your work early so that it makes your job easier later. He doesn't do that right now. And this guy switched from wide receiver to cornerback after his sophomore year. So you're only talking about 2 years of experience at the cornerback position. So keep that in mind. But I like what I saw. This is a guy that, to me, has tremendous upside, and one of those guys that ultimately can make your team as a 7th-round draft pick here in the 7th round, 221st pick overall, cornerback out of FIU. Stanley Thomas Oliver III is a 3 to wrap up this Panthers draft. Thought it was a really impressive haul. I was shocked that they took no offensive players. That caught me off guard, but I get it. I understand it. This side of the football needed a ton of help. The last regime left you a lot of workable parts on the offensive side of the football. So you felt like, add Teddy Bridgewater to the mix. Got a bunch of receivers already. You added some receivers in free agency. You got Christian McCaffrey. You got a bunch of backs on the roster already, So you felt like, from that standpoint, got enough stuff on that side of the football. I thought you could have used the tight end. This wasn't a great tight end draft. Okay, that's fine. Thought you could have used some more offensive line help. Yeah, okay, fine. You decided to bypass that. Go defensive line help instead. Cool. I'm with that. It was a really good draft overall. You see the direction that Matt Rhule's heading in. You see what he's trying to do. Speed, athleticism, and more speed. And so all that amounted to a 3.57 in this draft for the Carolina Panthers, which equals a B in this draft for the Carolina Panthers. You want to see the grading rubric and how all of that works? Down in the description of this video, you can see what the Carolina Panthers were able to do and how they achieved that 3.57 and ultimately a B in the 2020 NFL Draft Wrap-Up Series. I'm your man, Louie T, signing off. Thank you for joining me. Remember, if you haven't already done so, what are you waiting on? Subscribe to the Louie T Network. Turn on that notification bell so you don't miss a thing. Like this video. Make sure you're following me on the socials. That way you don't miss out on anything. You want to stay abreast of what's going on here on the Louie T Network outside of turning on that notification bell. Socials are the way to do it. On Twitter, at Louie T Network. On IG, Louie T Network _. Those are the best ways to keep up with what's going on here. Also, if it's not me, your man Louie T, it's not, I repeat, not the best NFL coverage it could be. Until next time, you guys stay safe, take care of yourself with all the madness that's going on out there. Stay safe, take care of yourself, and we will reconvene at a later date and time. Have a good one.